Hey guys, welcome to SB Basic. I've received numerous requests for a bread recipe. Having fresh bread on board is always a nice thing to have. And when you're in port, that's never a problem. You go to the local bakery, you pick up a loaf or two. But when you're in a remote area, at anchor, or just underway, that's not as easy. Having a good bread recipe will win you big brownie points with the crew, and who doesn't love the smell of fresh bread coming out of the oven? This is the no-knead bread recipe that I picked up in a Mark Bittman article in the New York Times years ago. I've used it ever since, and I can't tell you how easy it is to make. If you're looking for a crusty on the outside, airy and chewy on the inside, then this is the recipe for you. So stick around and let me show you how I cook my bread on board. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is get your ingredients in order. And that is only 4 ingredients. 4! One of it is water, so it's really easy. To start out, we're going to need 3 cups of all-purpose unbleached flour, half a teaspoon of yeast, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and 1.5 cups of room temperature water. You're going to combine the dry ingredients in a medium mixing bowl. If the crew's looking, because this is the hard part, right? If the crew is looking, you just take a wooden spoon, you dab a little flour on your forehead, you mix it around. When they're not looking, then you add that water. The water, you have to kind of gauge it depending on the humidity in the air. You don't need the full 1.5 cups of water. So you pour most of it in, you leave about 1/4 cup left over, and you keep adding it until the consistency of the dough looks shaggy. So now the hard part is done. You can cover your dough with some cling wrap and let it do its magic. I like to start this the night before, after dinner, so it has time to develop its flavors, and by noonish I can take my next step. So at this point the dough has rested for about 14 hours. This is doubled in size and you got nice little air pockets all throughout. Plus the smell in the cabin is spectacular. I'll go ahead and lightly flour the board before I roll out the dough. This is the only time I will really touch the dough. You just roll it lightly into itself into a nice round ball and let it rest. Now I'm going to use a little parchment paper and put it back in the bowl that we used earlier. And there's a reason I like to use parchment. I'm going to put the dough back in there. You can go ahead and bake at this point, but I don't like to. I like to let it rest for a little bit longer before I put this in the oven. This recipe calls for a Dutch oven. That gives your bread the crusty exterior that we all love. You will need to preheat it in the oven at 450. I personally use a cast aluminum Dutch oven which cuts the preheat time in half. Plus, the captain approves of its weight. This is where the parchment paper pays off, because once your Dutch oven is up to temperature, you can use the paper to transfer the dough to your oven with ease. Cover the bread and bake it for about 30 minutes. I like to check it after 25 minutes to make sure it's getting that nice golden look. Once you're happy, I uncover the lid and I bake it for another 15 minutes to get that extra crusty exterior. So after after the bread has cooled down, I like to use this as the main highlight instead of using it as a side dish. So for tonight, I'm going to pair it with some cured meats, a nice array of my favorite cheese, some seasonal fruit, and a nice bottle of wine. Tonight's wine is a gorgeous medium-bodied Zinfandel from the Sergazio family vineyards. This has flavors of dark cherry, black raspberry, and hints of pepper. This is so yummy. The meal was a hit with the crew, but it was a large loaf, so there was enough left over for me to make French toast the next day. None of this went to waste. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Cooking on Board. Please try it. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Tune in next week for another easy recipe. Until then, I will see you guys next Monday. Cheers!